They always say, go big or go home. We love monster trucks, big nukes, and massive bazookas. But whoever said that never stepped on a Lego brick. So, forget bigger is better, and let's look at the tiniest, weirdest, and most dangerous weapons in each category, starting with the smallest pistol ever made. Now, it looks like a cute toy on the outside, but the 67mm Calibri pistol is something you'd never expect. An Austrian watchmaker, not the famous painter, invented it way back in 1910 as a self-defense weapon for ladies. The name Calibri is kinda cute by itself, being German for hummingbird, but that's just a start. What's crazy is the 2mm bullets. Since the gun has a 31mm barrel length, its bullets look like grains of rice. Basically, if you drop it on the carpet, you likely won't find it ever again. And if you're hit, it's basically the equivalent of a mosquito bite fused with a strong punch. Yeah, it was a masterpiece of engineering, but as a weapon, it was kind of a joke. But what if you want something a bit fancier than the Calibri? Well, this brings us to the Swiss minigun. If the Calibri were a hummingbird, the Swiss minigun is a piece of art. It still holds the Guinness World Record for the smallest working revolver in the world. Yes, it looks precisely like a cowboy six-shooter, something you'd see in a Western movie. Except, it's the size of a keychain. Seriously, it's only 55mm long and weighs 20 grams. But this isn't just a lucky charm, it is real, firing bullets that are 2.34mm wide. Now, I get that you might want one, but good luck. It costs about the same price as a new car, and just like the Calibri, it isn't exactly deadly. Yes, the bullet travels at 435 kilometers an hour, but in the gun world, that's pretty slow. So this gun might not help you take down bad guys, but at least you'll look rich reloading it with tweezers. Oh, and yeah, you actually do need a pair of tweezers to load the bullets. Talk about hassle during a gunfight. But the Americans also wanted something cheap and small during World War II. So they came up with the FP-45 Liberator. It was a pistol made of stamped sheet metal, basically a glorified staple gun. It was cheap, ugly, and incredibly small. In fact, it only cost about $2 to make. But the Americans pumped them out at massive speeds. It took just 6 seconds to make one and 10 seconds to reload. It's quite literally faster to just build a new one than reload your old one. But you only had one shot, and if you missed, you were done. It was basically the throwaway camera of the gun world. It was just over 12 centimeters in length with a weight of 1 pound, firing a .45 caliber round. Now, if carrying a gun in your pocket is too much, why not wear it? Back in the 1800s, people needed protection but didn't want to ruin the lines of their suits or dresses. So guess what? They created the Petite Protector, a ring that you wore on your finger with a 6-shot revolver. It looks like the most dangerous engagement ring ever, almost like, will you marry me? Bang! No! Its ammunition was the pinfire cartridge, but it scared an attacker in a dark alley. So, pistols are pretty weak when they get small, but what about something faster? What about a machine gun? Well, in the 1970s and 80s, security guards and Secret Service agents needed something that could fire fast, but also be hidden in a jacket. Enter the Mini and the Micro Uzi. I mean, come on, the Uzi is famous, a great gun for gang wars, movies, and video games alike. But the Micro Uzi is the baby brother, and it is absolutely insane. Let me go ahead and break it down. This gun is only 28 centimeters long when folded, and it fires 1,200 rounds per minute. That is 20 9mm rounds leaving the barrel every second. You basically empty the magazine before you know it, and it's impossible to hold still. Now, while it's not the most accurate gun ever made, you're damn sure gonna scare the whole neighborhood. So, we've had guns, but what about a knife? Well, if guns are a bit too loud for you, the push dagger, or gambler's best friend, is perfect. It's only a little over 15 centimeters long and considered the smallest lethal blade in history. It came from the dusty saloons of the 19th century, so it wasn't a soldier's weapon, but one for the cowboys. It's T-shaped, designed to be held inside a closed fist with the blade poking out between your fingers. From the outside, it looks like you're making a fist, but when you punch, you're punching holes. They tried to outlaw them in 1879, but the gimlet knife, as New Orleans native called it, has stuck around. Now, they say you never bring a knife to a gunfight, but what if a gun ain't enough? Sometimes you need an explosion, like the V40 mini grenade. Now, there are hundreds of grenade models out on the market, but they are heavy and tiring after a while. Soldiers already have to carry backpacks with gear and ammo, so the Dutch Army invented the V40 mini grenade. And when I say mini, I mean tiny, just 4 centimeters. This thing is barely bigger than a golf ball. Actually, it's the exact size of a golf ball. You could put it on a tee and hit it with your driver. But I really don't recommend that. The upside, though, of the V-40s was just how many soldiers can carry. But don't let the size of them fool you. This is still a grenade, filled with explosives and steel fragments that will take a limb off your body. Now, imagine a soldier throwing it like a baseball. I bet they have competitions to see who throws it the furthest. This is the true definition of dangerous things coming in small packages. But are you ready for something a little bit darker, something that could end the world? And I'm talking about nuclear weapons. And when you think of nukes, I bet you probably think of missiles or bombs. But during the Cold War, the United States wanted a nuke that could be used on the battlefield, just enough to harm a few guys. So they came up with the Davy Crockett. It's one of the craziest weapons ever invented. This wasn't a missile, but a recoilless rifle. Basically, it was a fancy tube on a tripod. But when used, it fired the M388, a warhead that looked like a watermelon with fins on its back. Cute? Yes, almost like a cartoon rocket. But inside the small watermelon was a nuclear bomb strong enough to wipe out an entire tank division. There's only one problem: range. The Davy Crockett only shot the bomb about 1 or 2 miles. Definitely not enough range to avoid the radiation. So the soldiers were told, dig a really deep hole, fire the weapon, and hide your head. It might have been the smallest nuke with 79 centimeters ever designed, but it wasn't the smartest. Speaking of distance, by the way, sometimes you need a rifle, like the Henry AR-7 survival rifle. Maybe you need to go hunting for food. Maybe you need some protection. Who said you can't carry a rifle in your backpack? This was the Transformer of the gun world, originally designed for Air Force pilots. It looks like a simple plastic stock, just over 43 centimeters when folded, but it's an 89 centimeter rifle that fires 22 caliber rounds. It unfolds in just 30 seconds and is by far the smallest rifle in the world. I wouldn't recommend it for hunting, but it'll damn sure keep you safe when you need it to. Plus, it's just 3.5 pounds. So land weapons can be small, but what about the ocean? Submarines are usually monsters. They're underwater cities with hundreds of crew members. But the British have always been innovators, and in World War II, they invented the motorized submersible canoe. Spies called it Sleeping Beauty. Sounds like a fairy tale, right? But the reality is quite scary. And for the person inside, it was a nightmare. This was basically a metal canoe that could go underwater. It was just 3.6 meters long, but here's the catch. It wasn't pressurized, so the pilot had to wear a scuba suit and oxygen tank. He was all alone, sailing the dark ocean, but keeping a close eye on not running out of oxygen. It was effective though, sneaking up on enemy ships, sticking a mine or a bomb to it, and disappearing. No doubt it was the smallest submarine ever made, but it took some huge guts to operate. Just like tanks, you know, those big monsters that just destroy everything. But not the German Goliath. I know, it sounds ironic, but it gets better. The Goliath wasn't a tank for a person to sit inside, but the world's first remote-controlled tank mine. It looks like 2 tanks had a baby with tracks and a small body just waiting to grow up, but being about 60 centimeters tall and 1.5 millimeters long, your kid might want it for Christmas. But don't be fooled. This tank had an operational turret and was packed with around 100 kilograms of explosives. German soldiers would hide in a trench and use a joystick connected to a long wire. Yeah, that was before the world went wireless. They'd drive Goliath across the field toward the enemy bunkers, and when it got close enough, boom! Yeah, the intent was never for it to come back home, but there were too many problems. Some soldiers tripped over and broke the wires, and sometimes it just got stuck in the mud. It was so slow, at just 6 kilometers an hour, that enemy soldiers spotted it from miles away. It wasn't really effective and proved that remote control weaponry still needed a lot of time. I mean, just imagine running out, cutting the wire, and having a toy tank souvenir. Yes, it wasn't perfect, but it paved the way for the modern robots we use today. And I'm talking about modern drones. Let's face it, drones have evolved on the battlefield. It protects those on the front lines. They fire missiles and detect the enemy. But when a soldier needs to look around a corner without getting shot, they call on the Black Hornet. Some might argue, but in terms of efficiency, the Black Hornet is the smallest military drone in the world. And when I say small, I'm talking the size of a dragonfly. It's 10 to 25 centimeters in size, and 18 to 70 grams in weight depending on the model. But where it proves effective is that it is quiet. It can fly 3 meters above your head, and you barely hear it. Soldiers carry these little things in their pouch, and if they sense enemies are hiding behind a wall, they don't have to guess. They just pull out the Black Hornet. It's like having a superpower. You can see everything, like Gaara's third eye in Naruto. Shout out to my anime bros. But don't think you can just go buy one. They cost a cool $195,000. Yeah, you heard that right. 200 grand essentially for a plastic helicopter. So if you see a soldier fly one, don't try to swat it away like a fly. It will be a very expensive mistake. But what if you want to stop the enemy in their tracks? You think Lego bricks will work? Well, maybe it will, and I'm talking about the caltrip. You know, that thing you see James Bond drop from his car. It is the ancient forefather of the Lego brick, used since the days of Alexander the Great. 4 metal spikes pointing in 4 directions, but one always pointing up. Being only about 2.5 to 5 centimeters wide, it's easy to conceal and hard for the enemy to see. This is the original spike strip and tire destroyer of the world, and guess what? It's been used in every single war, ever. But if age-old tech isn't really your thing, maybe you like something a little messier, like fire. Flamethrowers are terrifying. In fact, they've been classified as literal war crimes, but usually it's just a guy with a huge tank on his back and a long hose spraying liquid. But not the Germans in World War II. They got a bit more creative than that. They wanted a flamethrower for everyone, creating the Flamethrowers 46. It's a really long word for a really small weapon, but it translates to single-shot flamethrower 46. On the outside, it looks like a metal tube, sort of like a fire extinguisher, but instead of putting out fires, it creates chaos. It only fired one burst for about half a second, and it was disposable. Imagine that, a disposable flamethrower. It was just 60 centimeters long, 3.5 kilograms in weight, and carried 1.7 liters of fuel. But the danger of this thing was real. If a stray bullet hit the canister, it was game over. Almost like a human firework, proving that convenience isn't always safe. So what about missiles? You want something that goes boom? Then the Naval spike missile is calling your name. It's not a small grenade, but a guided missile. While most missiles are huge, this one is just about 2.4 kilograms. It's 63 centimeters long and laser guided. It's like a spicy baguette, but here's the kicker. It can carry a real warhead. The Naval is strong enough to blow up a boat or a car. It's simple to use, just choose the target, pull the trigger, and sit back and relax. But what if you are that car or bike? Well, maybe you want to travel in style while you fight. We've talked about tiny tanks and small Uzis, but what about the scooter of doom? Meet the Vespa 150 Tap. You should know Vespas, you know, those common scooters often found in many countries. Well, the French military took this one step further. They took a Vespa and said, do you know what this needs? A giant cannon! And no, I'm not joking. They took a regular Vespa, shoved a 75mm rifle through it, and said, let's go to war. The idea was that paratroopers could drop out of the sky with these, hop on, and blow up some tanks. Only one problem. They can't fire the cannon while the scooter is moving. If you did, you'd flip or crash. They basically had to stop, take the gun off, and set it up on a tripod before firing. It wasn't really a tank, just a very angry moped. But where Tiny really paid off was in the hands of secret agents. I think we look at them again for a second. In our previous video, we talked about guns disguised as pens or even lipsticks, but what about the smallest shotgun? Now, your average shotgun is usually long, meant for hunting or breaking down doors, but sometimes you need that power in a tiny package. This brings us to the Serbush Super Shotty. A funny name, I get it, but the weapon is some serious business. It's a shotgun chopped down until it's barely bigger than a handgun. It's just over 42 centimeters with a 16 centimeter barrel, but it holds 3 shells. Basically, it has an attached underbarrel of a normal gun, and while you rarely see it, law enforcement uses it as a master key. Basically, they can enter any door with it. Unfortunately though, the gun isn't that accurate, so don't try bird hunting from afar. Shotguns are great, but in war, artillery's definitely better. You've probably never heard of the smallest artillery ever, the French 37mm trench gun. Now, artillery is massive, but in World War I, they needed something a bit smaller. Something that fits inside, as the name implies, trenches. Enter the Canon d'Infanterie de 37 Model 1916, the cutest cannon ever produced. It's got a range of 2.4 kilometers and fires 37 by 94mm rounds with a barrel length of 74 centimeters. But it's still very heavy at over 160 kilograms. The cannon was extremely effective, but I might accidentally chalk it off as a toy if I didn't know any better. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the smallest weapon that isn't a machine. We've talked about metal and explosives, but sometimes the smallest weapon is biology. During the Cold War, the CIA created a dart gun. It is the world's smallest deadly projectile. Now, the weapon itself isn't actually a gun, but a dart, a tiny needle thinner than a human hair. Even crazier is how it was designed. On the inside was a special frozen poison. It relied on the neutral heat of the body, and when it was fired, it instantly melted on the target. Because of this, it left no trace. No bullet to find, just a victim collapsing from something that felt like nothing more than a mosquito bite. Now that should scare you. A weapon that, when you realize you're hit, it's already too late, and it isn't even a nuke or a tank. I mean, you can't even see it coming, and we can only wonder if it was ever used in combat. It proves that size doesn't always matter. Sometimes it's about how smart and how sneaky you can be. Like this final one, the smallest mine you've ever seen. The limpet mine. If a torpedo were a sledgehammer, the limpet mine is a scalpel. It is a small explosive with magnets at the bottom. It contains up to 5.5 kilograms of explosives and blows the hell out of ships. The swimmer plants it to the hull like a fridge magnet and swims away, and once the timer runs down, boom. That is David versus Goliath. One swimmer takes down a massive World War II ship. So, which one do you find scary? The tank, the moped, maybe that little CIA dart? Let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you next time.